Hello, happy Thanksgiving. Hi. So today we'll be making a margarita pizza, like from how they do it in Naples. So we already got our ingredients laid out. We got salt, warm water, olive oil, all-purpose flour, and yeast. And now we're gonna mix it all up together.
How much all of this?
I think this was 1 or 2 tablespoons. This is 1.5 cup of water.
Tablespoon or teaspoon?
2 tablespoons. This is 10 grams of yeast. This is 3.5 cups of flour. I'm still watching the video because it's my first time doing it.
I'm gonna make a little hole in the middle. And
hole in the middle.
Now, if you find that while you're working it through, the dough feels a little bit too wet or too dry, you could always make small adjustments.
Wow, this is gonna be such a new experience for me. Hopefully this turns out good. Thanksgiving Day.
And just bloom it. And what I mean by bloom is add a little bit of warm water to the yeast, a bit too wet or too dry.
Now we're gonna add some warm water, just like what we said.
And before we put in the yeast, start to add. Now, if you find that while you're working it through, the dough feels a little bit too wet or too dry, you can always make small adjustments.
Aku tambah ya. Aku mix semua.
Put in the yeast. We're gonna come over to the sink and just bloom it. And what I mean by bloom is add a little bit of warm water to the yeast. Let it sit for a couple seconds. Mix it around with your finger. And essentially, I want this yeast to turn into a paste. One of the things you hear a lot about pizza is that pizza is a living thing. You know, it sounds wacky, but it's not. This yeast is living, you know. When you make pizza and you're dealing with dough, it's like dealing with a pet, essentially. You always have to tend to it. The activity is constantly going on inside of the bread. And I tell people this time and time again, incorporate the yeast, get that in there. It's kind of important to get it all in.
Oh, right.
And if you're having a little bit of difficulty getting it at the bottom of the cup, back to the sink.
Now we're gonna take the dough out of the grate thing and putting it on the table to make it mix easier with the flour on the table. I think you can use a little bit more flour now.
But once it starts to cook, because you didn't push down that edge part,
So
that rim will puff right up.
Actually, like a lot of flour.
You'll see, we put lighter ingredients in the middle and heavier around the outside.
This is the flour.
When that crust puffs up,
Ini yang maksudnya flour
Yeah,
ini.
that flour.
throughout this whole process, it's important to sort of be delicate and aware of how you hold the dough.
Oh, and on top of it too?
Start off nice and easy, kind of flip in California, somewhere
So Mama makes a lot of bread, so she kind of already has a general idea on how to work dough or how to make a dough good.
Restaurant called Umberto's, and it's a very simple pizza to make. We're gonna start with a nice generous amount of olive oil on the bottom of the pan. And as you can see, I'm not holding back. With your clean hands, you kind of want to spread it around. And this is
pizza, they take tomato sauce and then they add more water than sauce to make a profit. Because tomatoes are expensive.
Yes.
So the flavor is water. And that's how you run a business.
Yeah.
So now this is the fun part, where you start just like moving the dough around. Make sure you don't touch the edge that much so you can have a crust that lifts. So when you spread it like this, you don't want to go to the very edge because you want to have a crust that's thicker than
So
the
that tiny
rest of
piece
the
is one whole pizza. That's kind of amazing. But if your hands are too sticky, you need more flour, right?
Well, it shouldn't be sticky anymore because that's why we got to this stage already.
Oh,
Really the
don't
one
break it.
classic ingredient,
Big.
in my opinion, that defines New York pizza, and that's dry oregano. We're going to sprinkle
Dry oregano.
We have that.
mozzarella cheese.
Yeah.
This is a fresh mozzarella cheese that we make up as pizza. It's very easy to go to.
You think maybe just break some and put it in the
Fresh mozzarella. Never gets cooked. It's essentially just taking tomatoes and pouring it into a bowl, crushing up with your hands, seasoning with salt and pepper to the way that you like it,
Diletakkan aja bang.
throwing in whatever
Oh
else
ya
you
bisa
want.
juga sih diangkat ya. Orang
The
itu nggak ada
pizza
yang
has been
angkat ya.
sitting over to the side for about
We're all
10
new
minutes.
to this
You can
right
see that it's risen. You
Cek
can see the
angkat
bubbles
bang,
really
cek
coming up.
gini kan.
So we got some fresh mozzarella.
There you go.
I tried to take the moisture out a little bit by squeezing it in there because you kind of ideally want a little moisture.
Knock it out the first first
I
time.
think it's fine.
Don't get discouraged. Keep going. Next, though, we're gonna make the grandma.
And just like what that video
First time I
said,
had the grandma pizza was out in
even
Long
if it's
Island
not
at a
perfect,
restaurant
just keep
called
going and
Earl's.
practicing.
And it's a very
Ini perfectali punya mama. I'm actually kind of jealous. Yours,
Is that enough cheese?
I think so, should be. Now let's do another 10 minutes.